Hey everybody, it's Commander Clyde. Welcome back to a tier list video. This is not for duel, real quick, just to get that out of the way. This is a solo lane tier list. I'm going to specifically be looking at solo lane picks today, alright? So, duel's currently not working because Bull Demon's completely bugged, so the mode is not playable right now. In fact, Hi-Rez took it off of the list of modes you could queue, so tried to think of something to do today, and I thought this would be a good one. So I've got the warrior thing highlighted here because that's where we're going to be starting. I'm going to be talking about the top three, even though one of the top three is not a warrior. We'll get into that in a bit. Right away to start off, King Arthur. Duh. Best solo laner in the game right now, probably. He gets ridiculous mileage out of Glad Shield. It's completely dumb, which makes him so hard to kill. His abilities are all really good. He's got really high damage, good CC chaining. Ability that just completely removes you from a fight, and he hits the big damage on you. And he gets pressure against pretty much anything. It's just really tough to deal with him. Bar none. Alright, continuing with that. Number two, we got Tyr. Of course, we've seen a lot of this god right now after his buff. His healing's still pretty nuts. He's got a lot of good lane control. He's very good at attacking backline targets and taking them, singling one out and killing it. He wins the lane in most matchups. Basically, he's a really annoying and difficult god to fight. So Arthur's actually a little bit easier to deal with because there's ways you can kind of cheese him. Cripples in that because of Tyr's ridiculous healing, though. He's really difficult to fight, even though King Arthur is technically better than him right now. Alright, ignore this. So, where is he? I have to type in his name. He didn't show up. This thing's bugged. There he is. Okay. And then finally, everyone's favorite snake, Mr. Jormungandr. There he is. Again, a good lane control god. High burst damage. Very annoying. Very hard to kill. And he ends up in this top three because he's good in particular against these two gods, since a lot of their abilities don't actually affect him. Arthur can't use his combo stance ult. Tyr can't use Fearless on him or knock him up with his one in blue stance. So it makes him a good counter option if these gods are all, if these two are on the table. And that and his ult is completely ridiculous for objectives. Things like Fire Giant and Titan. It's really tough to deal with. This big snake just coming in and eating you and all of this nonsense. Alright, back to warriors. Then of course next it's the old standby Osiris. He's going to be a good pick in the solo lane pretty much every time. He's solid, good lane control, good single target damage, which makes him a really great boxer, so he tends to get a lot of pressure, especially against these gods. He's a good pick into Jormungandr and King Arthur, not so much Tyr. It's just because of the way Tyr's kit works. It just doesn't jive well with Osiris. It's kind of a weird matchup. But yeah, Osiris is that classic lane control god you can always rely on, and he'll usually win the lane in any matchup. Alright, this is where we actually get into some weird territory. Is there another solo laner that belongs up in this upper tier with these gods? That's what we're looking at. Let me run over here real quick and see. So yeah, we're definitely not looking at another Guardian here in S+. See, this is a tough choice because the next two best, in my opinion, are Cuchulainn and Achilles. But are they on this level with these gods? That's the thing, I don't know. I think I'll very slightly give it to Cuchulainn. There's a big reason for this. Cuchulainn is one of the few gods that is good in solo that has built-in anti-heal. His one is 50% anti-heal. And in the solo lane where sustain is a big deal, that's a really important fact to keep in mind. He's a very good pick if you're concerned about gods out-sustaining you, because he's already got anti-heal, which means he's going to have better sustain anyway. That's the idea with him being there, and I think he's good enough to be up in this tier with these gods. Because of that, and like I said earlier, our next best is Achilles. Of course, good healing, good, again, control, good single target damage. Works a lot of the same way Osiris does, while having better sustain. Osiris is going to get a little bit better pressure because he's a good boxer. Achilles is not as much of a boxer as he is, so he's going to hang out down here in S tier. And that execute is big because it basically means you're fighting him with less health than you actually have. It can give him a very slight advantage in situations where your opponent doesn't have a lot of healing. Now, if you're up against like tier King Arthur, it's not going to be that beneficial to him because King Arthur has Glad Shield mileage and then Tyr has that big heal. While we're talking about big heals, Guan Yu is going to be in the conversation here. This is going to be a bit of a weird one. One of the few free gods in the game that actually has a good presence in the solo lane. There's some big reasons for this, and the main being he, in some ways, can counter King Arthur in tier. It's a very bizarre for a god that's incredibly average most of the time. But again, it's his 3 is knock-up immune, so he can't get hit by Fearless, he can't get knocked up by King Arthur. Which means, well, he's knock-up immune in his 3, and that's his main clear, so you can't interrupt it unless you've got hard CC. So he can just push the minions forward and clear them. His 2 is also really good because if he times that properly, he can get through most knock-up abilities without being knocked up. If you use it properly, it's very easy to read a tier Fearless, use your 2, and then you're totally fine. So that's the main reason he's here. He's got a good matchup against some of the better gods. And then his ult for teamfight is good, plus his healing is good for teamfight. So all those things together, he's in a good spot. Which means we're going to throw Bellona down here next. Again, another very similar to Osiris god, because she's a good boxer. She's got good healing from Scourge. She can get a lot of lane pressure if you get Berserker Shield and all that. Very good at chasing a single target down and removing it. Not the best team fight out there, but she makes up for it with everything else. So we like that. So with that in mind, Chalk is going to get thrown down next. Of course, some of you may not be aware of that if you're watching my Conquest games, because I'm not playing him a lot in Conquest, but he's my main god. I like him a lot. Of course, he's not a top tier solo laner. He's very average because he's very hard to kill, and he's good with lane management because he has good clear and high sustain. And that's about it. You're going to have a hard time soloing your opponent with him. He's got decent team fight because he's got a big slow and a big ultimate. So, again, circles, they're just good for team fighting, you know. But in the lane, he doesn't bring that much to the table. Besides, you know, he beats the other gods that are left up here. And that's all he's got going for him, really. Next is going to be Hercules. Good healing, good sustain. His passive is really good because it gives him free power, which means he's just going to outbox you all the time unless you're one of these gods up here. Cuchulain's got the anti-heal, and then these guys have ways to actually out-damage him. And of course, Yorm can't get pulled by the two, so that combo is not really available to Hercules. Safety there. That's what he brings to the table. He's not great in team fights, though. He's very much a grab a single target god and pick it for the rest of your team to kill. And his healing is very counterable because of how it functions with that. It's got that, you know, initial burst, and then the health returned at the end. You can work around that, though. It makes him a lot easier to deal with. We're thinking here. Sun Wukong, I think. It's the next guy. He's very solid, good lane clear. He's very annoying in the lane. He's not exactly a big boxing threat to you most of the time. He's just incredibly annoying to deal with. He's got okay team fight, although he's more about chasing a single target, like Bellona is. Except he's more efficient in the lane. Which seems like he'd be better than Bellona, but he's not, just because he doesn't deal a lot of damage, typically. Especially against his lane opponent. Then we get Amma in here. I don't really like her as a solo laner. She loses the lane to almost every god you can pick in the match, in the matchup. Like, she's got decent clear, and her late game is good, but I mean, I don't like her in the solo lane because every other god seems to beat her. That's that old lose lane, win game mentality, but is that really that useful when solo doesn't really make a huge impact on the outcome of the game? I don't know. Okay, there were a couple of gods I forgot about here that we're going to talk about. Ardeo. Let's see. Let's throw her in here in this spot. She's the second best solo lane guardian, in my opinion. Incredibly high sustain, incredibly annoying. Her lane clear is pretty decent, and she can get high pressure fairly early into the game. I've always been a big fan of her. She was the best solo lane guardian until Yorm was released. Of course, and we like that around here. I think going into the next tier is probably Sobek. Keep in mind, I'm not really paying attention to the tiers here. Like, there's probably not going to be gods down here, just because most solo lane gods have some viability that keeps them from being absolute trash in the pick. And of course, there's no SS tier solo laners because that implies this god can win you a game. There's not a solo laner in the game right now that wins. Solo lane doesn't impact you whether you win or lose the game. And that's really it, in my opinion. Haven't seen Umoja, don't know how good she is in that role, so I'm going to ignore that. Why is Nuwa here? Oh, because... Right, her name. Okay, so actually, I think I'm going to give some Ymir love here. I think Ymir can be a solid solo laner. He doesn't get picked at all. Just generally in Conquest, he isn't picked. But I think he could be very good. I mean, he's got the hard CC and stun, which makes him good against some of the gods up here, because he can stun them out of some of their clear and damage capabilities. He has incredibly good clear himself with Glacial Strike. His ult is kind of a non-factor in the role because it's a stationary ult. Well, it's really good for his CC immunity, or baiting your opponent to use their crowd control on you. And then there's the wall too, which can be good for securing kills if your opponent tower dives you and things like that. And it's a really good control ability in general. Very helpful in team fights since he can block off opponents and lock them down with his stun. Alright, let's get out of Guardians, go back to Warriors. So I want to finish out these guys here. So next comes Vamana. He's not very good in the lane right now. For whatever reason, he has a lot of trouble getting pressure against certain matchups. Mostly from the fact that his most reliable damage is his ultimate, and you don't want to use that a lot, obviously. There's a lot of guns that can just outbox him. Generally, Osiris can do that. Bellona can do that. Achilles can do that. Kakolin's got a good matchup because the anti-heal. These two are just annoying as hell. What you can do. And he's got a really odd matchup with Chalk. He loses to Chalk consistently. Which is really bizarre. A really bizarre bad matchup to have. And you really don't want that to be a bad matchup. Because it's Chalk. Like, he doesn't do that much. Vamana's just not good. His team fight is terrible. Because it's hard for him to properly initiate a target. He doesn't have enough. He generally isn't going to get enough burst off if you're paying attention to be a threat to you. And then he'll have to ult. And if you just dump all your damage and anti-heal on him, he kind of just dies. His ult doesn't give him a lot of great team fight presence. That's really about it. And then we got Nike here. It's just Nike. Although the more I think about it, she's probably up in here, actually. She's not quite as bad as Vamana, I don't think. I think she's slightly better because her clear is pretty massive. Her ult is very useful in team fights, unlike his. And she's got good control abilities with the push on her too, and then her knock up on her ult, all that. Odin, we're going to throw him down here in S-. He's one of the worst solo lane gods in the game, mostly because his main clear ability is all of his damage. And then what does he do to you after that? Nothing. He doesn't do anything. That's it. That's all you can say about him. These two I will not place because I do not think solo is appropriate for them. Horus is very much a support god. I really wouldn't try playing him in solo. And then Erlang is support and jungle god. Again, really wouldn't waste my time playing him in solo because I think he's better suited to other roles. You could. I just would prefer not to. We'll take a peek at the Guardians again to see if there's any that have good solo lane viability. Ares, Bacchus, Athena, Vad, Geb, Terrible. Cerberus is eh. Okay, Cerberus actually has some viability, but he's not very good. Though, he's got 1 big damage ability. 2 if you can hit it, if you can hit the 1. But I feel like he just gets out-pressured and out-rotated by a lot of other gods. Even though his late game is good, which probably makes him slightly better than Odin because he's got a better late game. But again, just not much else going on there. I forgot about Jing Chen. He's a very classic. He's very much built like a warrior, even though he's a guardian. Because he's got, he's got built-in sustain. His abilities can have high burst. He's got a good control ultimate that can hit multiple targets. He's very annoying in the lane, which is a very important quality for a solo laner, is to be annoying and frustrating and disruptive. I haven't seen much play from him, so it's tough for me to know where exactly he fits right now. At the beginning of Season 5, he was a monster. He's just not that way anymore. Rest of these gods, I don't like doing it again. Okay, so Guardian Nua's in here because her title is Guardian of Heaven or whatever, even though she's not a guardian. But the rest of these gods, Kuzenbo and Kumbhakarna are the only 2 that really have viability in the role, but this is the better suited to playing support type of deal again. So yeah, I wouldn't want to place these gods on a solo lane tier list. Could make an argument for Kuzenbo, but I think his damage is too low for him to be useful in the solo lane. He would just get out-pressured consistently. Assassin, let's look at the Assassin group. I haven't actually taken a look at them. This is a bit of a long-winded way to place these gods, but hear me out. Okay, so we got a few viable solo lane gods. Loki is... I hate Loki conceptually, and also his playstyle is bad because it's like he doesn't do anything, and if your team is behind, he just sits there and farms, and it's really boring. If you actually gank him, it's like his only usefulness comes super late when he can pick off targets, but if his team's behind, he's kind of useless. I just don't like a guy that's not team oriented in some fashion. In a team-based mode. And he's not tanky. So if you have a competent solo laner on your team, you can just lock him down and kill him. No big. Alright, Hunbots. Okay, now hear me out with this one, people. I only have 1 game of experience doing this. It worked really well, but that might have been a matchup thing. But I think this god is actually a really great sleeper solo laner pick. I know it's weird, but he's got good damage in the lane. He's very good. His lane clear is actually really good. He's got decent mobility. He's got a jump to escape. His ult, Big Circle, can push you, locks down a lot of damage. It's great if you have a gank, if you're planning a gank on someone. Single out the target, bam, they're dead. And if you get someone just the least bit out of position, you can ult them there too, and he can get a solo kill that way. I know it's weird, and you're probably not going to see it because I don't know if anyone's got the courage to actually do that. I usually don't because I don't want my team screaming at me for picking a weird god, but, I think it could still work. Raven, despite being an assassin right now, was, of course, originally a warrior. And his current kit is very decent in the solo lane. Really, in jungle and in solo, he's good. because he can be tanky. He's got an ability. His ultimate gives him damage reduction, so there's that. He's got a good heal. He's got decent enough lockdown. He's got a really good immunity ability to get him out of trouble. He can function pretty well in the lane, and his late game is good from the point of pick a target, kill it type of thing. Although he doesn't have the hard CC that a lot of the other solo laners might. Still good. Thor's got some viability in the role. I think his main issue is being able to solo a target. But he's got enough crowd control that it makes him a pretty useful pick in the solo lane, especially if you've got a jungler with good damage to back him up. If he's trying to get lane pressure and kill the solo laner, he probably can't do that by himself. But still solid, really annoying, disruptive qualities we all like for solo laners. Alright, Susanoo. Haddock shows you that this god has viability in the solo lane. I mean, he's got enough damage that he can be really threatening. His clear is good. High mobility. And he's got abilities that are good crowd control. Not the best because it's not hard CC. Well, isn't one of them's a pull, one of them's a knock-up. You could classify a knock-up as hard CC, I guess, in some situations. A bit weird. But yeah, he's got solo lane viability. I think I'm just going to start throwing these cards in here. Camazotz is good because of his sustain. Good single target damage. He has the capability to solo target. His team fight is awful, but hey, he can win you the lane, so that's what counts. Thanatos, kind of the same idea, except I don't know, they're about even, honestly, and I've seen Solo Troll try this, and it kind of works. It's sort of matchup dependent. If your opponent's competent, you're probably going to lose the lane, though. Because they're just going to take advantage of the fact that you're not very tanky. And just kill you. Like, if you're fighting Osiris, it's over. You don't do anything there. And then the rest of these gods I don't like in solo that much. Set is cheese, honestly, because the way he works, he's probably going to get out pressured. He's not very tanky. The only good thing he has is his ult, and it's kind of cheese, and I don't want to just say, oh, he's good because of his ult is completely stupid. No, that's a dumb reason to put him in a solo lane tier list when he can't really play, when he's not really designed to play that in any capacity. So the rest of these gods not going to place because they're better elsewhere. Let's see, we gotta look at a couple of mages here. Mages. Oh, this is too many. There's only a couple we're gonna talk about. Yeah, okay, there's a few we're gonna talk about. Where is he? I can't find that fat guy. Does he not come up? Okay, I'm gonna have to just track him down manually. Okay. Where is he? Okay, I'm just gonna have to find him, I guess. Give me a minute. He's missing. Okay. Why do I not see him on here? Bro, he's just not here. What? Dude, that's weird. Okay, anyway, Zhong Kui would be in here somewhere. Good sustain, good clear. He can be very tanky because of his passive. very annoying mage to fight because of that. He's a semi-tanky high pressure god, and that can be pretty good. His ult is also really great in team fights. Which means we're going to throw in some Chang'e down here. She can be really good, high sustain, decent damage. She's got hard CC. We love that. We love more the point of her being really high sustain and annoying. That's typically what we're interested in. So yeah, throw Chang'e in there. Who was I just thinking of? Right, Hel. Let's go ahead. We can throw her in front of the B team down here. So Hel hangs out down here. She's got good sustain, good damage, but she's can be pretty easy to exploit. Chang'e's a little bit harder because of her immunity and her ult having hard CC. Hel doesn't have those things, so you can exploit her pretty well with gods like Cullen. She has a very low health pool to start with, so that's your best time to manipulate her, and that's why I don't really like her that much. Her late game is pretty monstrous, but it's hard to get her there from the solo lane, in my opinion. Okay, let's type in mage again. And look at what we have here. There's not a lot of other mages that I feel have viability. Afro's got a little bit just because of her sustain, so I'll go ahead and put her in there as an option in certain situations, but you wouldn't necessarily want to pick her. So yeah. And I don't see any other mages that really fit in there in a good way, in my opinion. I haven't put in a hunter because I don't think they belong in solo. They're just not... It's not what they're made for. I can go ahead and talk about what you might want to use if you did pick a hunter. We're going to throw them down here, though, because I don't consider them solo laners, but you could in situation X, Y, and Z, you know. So we'll drop Cupid down there first. Probably the most viable hunter in the solo lane because he has a sustain, big circle ultimate with a cripple and a slow and a stun. Big damage combo there. He's got a dash for safety. All good things on her. Similar reasons, throw him down there. He's got good clear, good lane control because he's got a slow. He's got a knockback with a stun if you hit him in the wall. He's got a jump with a knockup, and he's got CC immunity, which is really important in solo. Because of that CC immunity, he gets to actually be somewhat of an option. Although that's very iffy at best. See, thinking who else do I actually like in solo as a hunter? I think I like Neith a little bit. That's a little bit of a weird one, but again, she's got sustain. Very good wave clear. Probably the best of any hunter. Good sustain, backflip for safety, although it's easy to read, and her ult can be useful across the map, which makes her pretty helpful in that regard. Since the solo lane's pretty low action, you get plenty of time to use that on targets if you want. So that's really helpful. Beyond that, I wouldn't really consider a lot of gods there. Let's see. Maybe you could make an argument for Hachiman because he's got a lot of mana sustain and his ult is helpful for keeping him safe. So, yeah, we'll go ahead and argue that. You could pick him as a solo lane option if you wanted to, because he is fairly safe. Beyond those four, I really wouldn't consider a hunter in the solo lane. Most of them are too vulnerable, don't get enough lane pressure, and things like that, and they just can't really handle the normal demands of the solo lane quite well. And they're also not very tanky. Which makes them easy to kill if they're ganked. So yeah, this is just basic solo lane tier list. I could place every god, but I don't want to. If I feel a god's not really made for the solo lane, they don't get picked, except in very rare situations where you wouldn't consider it a viable option as it is anyway. So yeah, your top four, which is probably your most often gods to be picked in solo lane. Right there, you see these guys. Cuchulain's situationally extremely good because he can counteract a very important part of the solo lane, which is sustain. Hanbots is a weird sleeper pick that I really like. Maybe we'll see him more. I don't know. And then Achilles, a good 1v1. Guan Yu counter some gods. Bellona, good 1v1. Blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to go through it, but yeah, here's the idea. These are the 4 gods you want to consider the most. Think about these 2 if you're in certain situational cases. These are very average solo lane gods that can control the lane pretty well, or have something built in that makes them difficult to deal with in the lane. Then we got our situationally good gods that aren't necessarily terrible, but they don't do a whole lot outside of the very specific things they're good at. And then solo lane hunter options, even though hunters really are not solo laners and you probably shouldn't consider them. So there you go, everybody. Hope you enjoyed this video. Leave a like and subscribe if you did. Comment down below about what you think about these solo lane picks. Let me know if you want to see some of these gods in some Conquest games. And I will see you guys later for some more Smite. Have a good one.